Well, even within the high trust framework, you do have the concept of scope. And so I could, if I chose, just assess and get certified a single function or application or feature of our offerings.
Okay.
But being a smaller organization, I couldn't imagine having this scope if I was any of these three peers. I'm able to do all of my organization that all the systems in my organization that house or manage PHI. But we're talking half a dozen systems in that case, because of the nature of the business I'm in. If I had dozens of systems, I would obviously want to look at that and slice it up and say, these are the ones that, even if you ended up having to do a dozen high trust assessments, each one would have a scope of something or a combination of things that were related. It goes back to that boiling an ocean kind of metaphor.
Yep.
So I think now, I'm on the firm belief that we should be assessing everything, and as a consultant, I'm happy to help out where that is. But traditionally, I would, what I would always focus on is you kind of do that initial sniff test of, where do you have either a large amount of regulated data or kind of those crown jewels that Chris, you mentioned earlier. Starting there, because you just know those are the hot items that need to be looked at. And that would be kind of part of my annual plan. At a minimum, we'd look at those and then get into, those other areas of that, there's routine change, like the vendor management, things that are constantly moving, constantly evolving. Then we add those on. It's kind of more of ad hoc assessments from there. That's kind of the scope that we defined.
Cool.
Yeah, the way that I approach scoping is, of course, you got to do your EMR, right, environment. But then on top of that, I also look at, is there any new implementations that we are ramping, that we're getting ready to finish, and can we lump that into a risk assessment from an external? We do our internal, we validate that it's set up what we feel is appropriate, but then we bring in external partners to do pen tests against that technology, or assess it to ensure that we saw everything and again weren't surprised by the findings. And then we also look at what are the most common avenues of exploitation. Email through social engineering is one. So, we'll include external phishing campaigns from a third party to validate our internal phishing results. So we focus on, of course, the PHI, the sensitive environments, any projects that we have going on or finishing up around the time of the external assessment, and then the most common avenues into the organization, for risk.
No, I think they definitely, really covered that again, that you do, there's so much you can cover and so, you can really get into the weeds. So you again want to be mindful of exactly what you're looking at. And I've always based it off, again, criticality, when you have going into kind of a more mature organization. And again, your EMR, of course, first and foremost on what touches PHI, and then kind of disruption on what's going to really impact the business, what's going to be a financial impact, what's going to be a regulatory impact, and really looking at it from that and kind of ensuring that you're putting all those pieces together and doing the right assessment to have really the right health check and point in time to really understand where you're at from that. But to a lot of what they all said was pretty familiar with what I went through with the ATO process, so the authority to operate with CMS. So it's very methodical and going through, really checking all of those boxes and doing your internal pieces. And then, as Chris said at the end, having the third party go through and doing all of that validation. So that's a good way to, to what we've spoken to so far, to really just have those objective third party people like John show up and, make sure that we're doing everything the right way.
One of the things that we've done before is focused on a specific type of event or threat. And in particular, given the amount of ransomware and the severity of ransomware attacks, we've done ransomware readiness assessments, right? So end to end, is your organization ready for a ransomware attack? Right? Do you have do you have any vulnerabilities that are specific to specific types of ransomware? Do you have Are your detective and responsive capabilities in place so you can detect and respond to maybe lateral movement or whatever's happening in the organization on the network? And then finally is your disaster recovery, is that process, your backups and all that stuff, right? So that was a little bit of a different type of an assessment that, we didn't really talk about, that was not your typical, here's some regulatory checklists that we need to do or some specific type of framework or model.